Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Shara Zorel here, and welcome to part 3 of What If Bakugo and Tokoyami Were Kidnapped. Just wanted to greet you guys by saying, I know that I have a different narrator, but please, sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. And so we begin. With the number one hero facing off against All for One, the student's resolve was restored. Hey, Bird Brain! Let's switch dance partners. Tokoyami nodded. Bakugo cast a large explosion at Shigaraki and Spinner before rushing at them. Tokoyami turned to Toga and twice. Dark Shadow was practically foaming at the mouth, eager to fight. He's so scary. Let's carve up this bird, Toga. Okay. The two villains ran at their target, flanking from both sides. Tokoyami found it difficult to focus on the fight. The stars in his vision were becoming more frequent, and there was a ringing in his ears. And his head, it hurt so much. Why was it hurting like this? He couldn't remember clearly. Dark Shadow roared as it charged into battle, feeling less restricted by his dazed controller. The Shades started with Toga, striking her with dark claws. Toga avoided the first attack and she slashed at the Shade's arm. Annoyed by the little blonde insect, Dark Shadow grabbed her with his other hand before slamming her into the ground. Twice slipped under Dark Shadow's radar and went straight for the source. Tokoyami didn't see the attack coming until the villain was right on top of him. The razor tape slashed deeply into the Raven Teen's leg. The sound of Tokoyami's cry got Dark Shadow's attention. Ah! He dropped Toga and headbutted twice, sending him across the landscape. Tokoyami glared at his opponents as Dark Shadow's eyes turned red. Shigaraki couldn't even get close to the explosive teen. He was playing too defensively. There was no way that Bakugo was going to let Shigaraki anywhere near him. It was easy to keep the leader of the league at a distance, but Spinner was a different story. Bakugo blasted Spinner, but the lizard man was more nimble than he looked. The hero killer's disciple jumped off a wreckage pile. He drew his blade and brought it down at his target. Bakugo blasted away from the attack before launching himself skyward. His muscles pulsed with pain as he blasted higher into the air. From his vantage point, Bakugo could see All Might fighting All for One. The number one hero seemed to be holding his own against a symbol of evil, but Bakugo could read between the lines. Damn it. All Might's holding back. We're holding him back. We have to get away from here so he can kick that guy's ass! A dagger whizzed past Bakugo's head, nicking his ear. He weaved through the air as more throwing blades were aimed at him. Another dagger plunged itself into Bakugo's shoulder as he flew straight at Spinner. He aimed both of his palms at the villain. Die! The explosion rang out and hit its mark. Not too far away from the action, an ice stalk peeked from behind a wall. It took in the details of the battlefield and watched the chaos unfold into a fight for survival. Tokoyami and Bakugo are fighting two villains each. Our classmates look injured, so I'm not sure how long they'll hold out. A panicked expression found its way to Kirishima, Yayurozu, Ida, and Todoroki. Midoriya masked his worry and fear by mumbling to himself, analyzing the scene from all angles. That is it! I'm going in there! Before Kirishima could run into action, Ida grabbed him and held him back. Slow down, Kirishima! You can't just go running in without a plan. Besides, All Might isn't even fighting at full power against that monster. We'd only be getting in the way. Yayurozu peeked over the wall. The scene she saw frightened her. If we're smart about this and work quickly, we could possibly extract Bakugo and Tokoyami without getting involved in the fight. That's still too dangerous. It might be best for us to slip away and let the pros take care of the league. If other pros could be here, they would have by now. Something must be happening somewhere else. We're probably their only hope. I'm with Shoji. I'm not abandoning my best friend again. What do you think, Midoriya? You've been talking to yourself for a while. What? Huh? Oh, yeah. I think I have a plan. One that keeps us out of danger, while also getting Kacchan and Tokoyami to safety. Todoroki, you'd make the biggest ice ramp that you can. Ida and I will use Kirishima like a battering ram to break through the wall. After we get airborne Kirishima, you'll have to call out to Kacchan. Why me? If it were me or anyone else, he'd reject the help. You've built up a camaraderie with him. If there's any of us that Kacchan will accept help from, it's his friend. Kirishima wiped manly tears from his eyes. While all of that's going on, Yaoyorozu will use a strobe light that's strong enough to cover the battlefield and blind anyone within that area. Are you able to make something like that, Yaoyorozu? I have just the thing in mind. I can do it. Okay, after we get Kacchan out of danger, Yaoyorozu will turn on the strobe light and blind everyone. That's where you come in, Shoji. You'll extend your arms out, grab Tokoyami, and bring him back here. We'll meet up at the square by that big TV screen. What do you think, Ida? Are we okay to go through with this plan? After a moment of thought, Ida nodded with a determined smile. This could work. We will make this work. Let's do it. You heard the man. Time to execute Operation Saving the Boys. While the team put the pieces of their plan into motion, the fight wore on. All Might was holding out against All for One. Shigaraki and Spinner had trouble getting near Bakugo, even as the explosive blonde was starting to run low on firepower. Tokoyami was having a hard time tangoing with Toga and Twice. The two villains were using hit-and-run tactics. One would attack the crazed Dark Shadow while the other would run in and attack Tokoyami before switching places and repeating the process. Thankfully for the Raven team, not all of the attacks were landing, but he was still running very short of patience. The final straw was lost with Twice's last attack. The split villain kicked Tokoyami in the head. The UA student crashed to the ground, hitting his head on a slab of concrete as he went down. He felt warm blood seep into his feathers. Dark Shadow stood defensively in front of his controller as Tokoyami forced himself to his feet. He glared at the villains, his crimson eyes somewhat unfocused. I'm at my limit with you loathsome scoundrels. Abyss black shadows swirled around Tokoyami. The shade grew in size, his eyes red and cracked. Dark Shadow, unleash your mad banquet of darkness. Show them the torrent of the abyss. Dark Shadow did as he was told. Tokoyami became consumed by his quirk. The feral gloom that had nearly killed Moonfish had returned, seeking revenge. The angry Shadow's movements were different from what they were in the forest. They seemed more directed, more focused at least. Crap! Tokoyami lost control again! I don't think so, Midoriya. This looks intentional. He's right. Dark Shadow isn't attacking Bakugo or getting near All Might's fight. He must still have some control. But he's inside that giant shadow beast. Are we still going to grab him too? We might not be able to. I'll do it. Everyone turned to Shoji, stunned expressions all around. I'll jump in there and get Tokoyami out. That's too dangerous, Shoji. We don't have enough time to make a new plan, which is why we need to do this now. I'm not leaving anyone behind. Tension dwells between the class rep and the Dupla-armed student. I don't know if Yaoyorozu's strobe light will be enough to weaken Dark Shadow in that state. I could give you 60 seconds after the other three are clear with Bakugo to try and talk Tokoyami down from the inside. Thank you, Todoroki. Shoji looked at the visibly worried Ida. Relax, Ida. You've done crazier for less than heroic reasons. I'll be fine. Ida's expression became determined. He nodded before getting into position with Kirishima and Midoriya. Shoji took his position between Todoroki and Yaoyorozu. The three exchanged a look before nodding to each other. Their plan needed to work. The price of failure was too high. With Dark Shadow taking the focus of all the League, Bakugo was free to flank Shigaraki. He wanted to make that creep pay for capturing him. Explosions shocked the area, only matched by the blows All Might was trading with All for One. Shigaraki was thrown from one of the blasts. Bakugo felt pain pulse through his arms. He felt cold and lightheaded. His heart was running a marathon in his chest and his breathing was short and shallow. Come on, buddy. Don't give out on me. I'm not dying here. An impish smile spread across Shigaraki's face. He walked closer to the weakened hero in training. Bakugo tried to move. Fight, run away, anything! Please just do something! It seems you're at your limit. Did you really think that you were going to escape? Game over, boy. A massive ice ramp appeared from the sidelines. A wall collapsed and something shot up the ramp. The projectile flew across the sky, high overhead. Come on! Bakugo saw Kirishima reaching out to him, giving the opening he needed. Shigaraki lunged for his target, but it was already too late. A fiery explosion erupted, and Bakugo was launched into the air. More blasts rang out as the UA student zoomed closer to his classmates. His hand gripped desperately around Kirishima's, a sense of relief washing over him. While Bakugo's escape had everyone's attention, the strobe lights were switched on. Shoji dashed straight for Dark Shadow while everyone was disoriented. He leapt into the Shade's maw without fear or hesitation. Once inside, he saw Tokoyami. Shadows were wrapped around the Raven teen's body. The last time Shoji saw his friend like this, Tokoyami was frightened and struggling against his quirk. Now Tokoyami was calmed and focused, even as Dark Shadow was raging. The sight made Shoji more unnerved than he'd like to admit. Shaking off the feeling, he carefully approached his classmate. Tokoyami, call off Dark Shadow. I'm here to get you to safety.
Can't. They hurt my peers. Hurt me. Make them pay 100-fold for what they did.
Tokoyami, they hurt my friends!
I'll make sure they never hurt anyone again!
Dark Shadow roared as more destruction occurred outside. Shoji noticed Tokoyami was shivering and his breath was sporadic. You're not thinking straight, Tokoyami, and we don't have time for this. We're leaving. Shoji wrapped all of his arms around Tokoyami just as yellow-orange flames and a bright strobing light struck Dark Shadow. The angry quirk quickly retreated into his controller as flames licked around the UA students. Shoji hit the ground running, holding his delirious classmate closely. By the time Todoroki's flames disappeared, there was no sign of the monstrous dark monster or any of the UA students anywhere. Ida, Midoriya, and Kirishima arrived at the rendezvous point. Kirishima and Midoriya each had one of Bakugo's arms over their shoulders. As much as the explosive blonde tried to keep his feet under him and walk, his legs weren't moving like he wanted them to. They just felt heavy, and it was difficult to just stand. There you two are. Yagyorozu and Todoroki had just ran onto the scene. Where are Shoji and Tokoyami? He had to run in a different direction than planned. He probably took the long way around to avoid being followed. Ida nodded, understanding, but still anxious. The final moments of All Might's fight against All for One played out before everyone on the massive screen displayed overhead. The small skeletal number one hero continued his fight, even with only one arm at his disposal. United States of Smash! All Might's final punch put All for One down. The symbol of evil was apprehended shortly afterwards and prepped to be sent off to the high-security prison of Tartarus. The sun began to rise, shining down on the aged and tired pro-hero. The crowds fell silent as All Might pointed at the camera.
Now it's your turn.
While everyone cheered, Midoriya did his best to stifle his tears and sobs. Bakugo would have noticed the tears in Midoriya's eyes, but he wasn't entirely conscious. Looks like he won. Hey, you made it. Of course. Tokoyami was carefully cradled in Shoji's arms. The Raven Teen appeared dazed and tired, his eyes half open and half aware. His hand weakly tried to cover his ears to block out the cheering people.
Shoji, your arms.
There was redness and blistering on the young man's arms and webbing. He could have only gotten that kind of injury when Todoroki's fire was used to take down Dark Shadow. I'm fine, Todoroki. I knew the risks when I jumped in there. Right now, we need to get these two to an ER. Kirishima and Midoriya were caught off guard when Bakugo's legs gave out on him. The explosive blonde had fallen unconscious, and his breathing was quick. Tokoyami wasn't faring much better. He was outwardly in pain from the noise. Shoji covered his friend's ears and shielded him from the light as much as he could. Shoji's right. Midoriya finished, wiping the tears from his eyes. Let's get moving. The group arrived at the hospital and all eyes from the staff landed on him. Tokoyami and Bakugo were rushed to the ER. Shoji was pulled aside to have his burns treated. The rest of the UA students were told to wait in the lobby. The few short hours felt like several days. When the doctor finally came out, The students jumped from their seats. A million questions ran through their minds, but none of them spoke. The doctor, however, could read the most pertinent question from their collective expressions. You kids were smart to bring your friend here when you did. Had they arrived 30 or so minutes later, they would have been worse off. What are their conditions? The doctor flipped through the chart he had in his hands. Bakugo lost close to 700 milliliters of blood and had internal bleeding in his right leg. It looks like a major artery was cut, and the wound that caused it was only sealed on the surface. He had a few other cuts that needed stitches. The muscles in his arms were heavily damaged from quirk overuse, but seemed fine aside from that. Is he going to pull through, Doc? Calm down, young man. The internal bleeding has already been taken care of, and your friend will be all right. He just needs a blood transfusion and some bed rest. And what about Tokoyami? He had a concussion. A pretty severe one, but thankfully there's no permanent brain damage. His throat was damaged, and there were a couple of cuts that needed stitches, but it's nothing that can't be healed. Tokoyami will have to be on bed rest for longer than Bakugo, and he won't be able to do any intense physical activities for a while afterwards. Is it okay for us to see them now? The doctor looked at the concerned expressions of the youths before him. He pinched the bridge of his nose and let out a conflicted sigh. Thinking for a solid minute. They're currently asleep, but as long as you're quiet and don't disrupt the staff, you can see your friends. Shoji insisted on being in Tokoyami's room while we worked, so he's already in there. The UA students thanked the doctor before moving to their classmates' rooms. Midoriya noticed that Ida was staying behind. Aren't you coming, Ida? No, thank you. I'm going to call Aizawa. As the class rep, I should be the one to tell him about Bakugo's and Tokoyami's condition. Oh, okay. Good luck. The green-haired boy nodded hesitantly before catching up with the others. After finding the rooms, the students split up. Todoroki and Yayorozu went into Tokoyami's room, while Kirishima and Midoriya went into Bakugo's. Midoriya and Kirishima saw Bakugo resting in the bed. Had it not been for the bandages covering his wounds and the IV in his arm to help recover his bodily fluids, the explosive teen would have looked almost peaceful. The League was quite adamant about getting their hands on him. I can't imagine what he had to go through. Try not to stress about it, Midoriya. Bakugo's tough, and we're here to support him when he needs it. Even with the optimism in his voice, Midoriya could tell that Kirishima was perturbed. The redhead's confidence seemed a little too forced. Midoriya smiled to reassure his friend. Right. A soft groan from Bakugo gained Kirishima and Midoriya's attention. The blonde regained consciousness, and his ruby eyes opened. The explosive teen looked at his classmates as they moved to his bedside. Kirishima? Deku? Where the hell am I? You're in the hospital. We brought you and Tokoyami here after we got you away from the League. How are you feeling, man? Like shit. The doc said you'd have to be on rest for a while. From when he told us, you lost a lot of blood. Bakugo sat up slowly, already tired of lying down. Midoriya became visibly panicked by this. Take it easy, Kachun! Shut up, Deku! A tense silence fell over the trio. Thanks. The explosive blonde could feel his classmates' confused looks on him. He shot a glare at them, but the angry expression came off softer than it was intended to. I said thanks, you morons! If you guys hadn't shown up, me and Tokoyami would have been killed or worse. Shocked expressions came across Midoriya's and Kirishima's faces before turning into pleasant smiles. Wipe those stupid grins off your faces! You're dead if you tell anyone about this! The two boys started to laugh at the blonde's expense. Bakugo would have been fuming if he didn't feel so drained. Excuse me. A couple of the boys in blue entered Bakugo's room. The UA students looked at them, partially confused. We have a few questions we need to ask Bakugo in private. You two are going to need to leave the room. One of the officers began to escort Midoriya and Kirishima from the room. Kirishima stopped walking before he could be removed. I'll visit you later, Bakugo. The blonde only nodded as the police cleared out the room. The door closed, leaving Midoriya and Kirishima in the hallway. In Tokoyami's room, Shoji sat quietly as he watched over his classmate. He only broke eye contact with the unconscious Raven teen when the door opened. Todoroki and Yaoyorozu entered, their eyes landing on Shoji first. Yaoyorozu was the first to brave a look at Tokoyami. There were bandages wrapped all around Tokoyami's head, arms, and parts of his torso. Bandages were probably all over his body. An IV was restoring lost fluids through his arm, and a heart monitor was attached to his chest. Although the student was in deep sleep, the expression on the young man's face was contorted in anguish. How is he? The nurses didn't tell me much when they were tending to him. From what I heard, though, his cuts aren't too deep, and the damage to his throat isn't permanent. They seemed concerned about his head injury from what I could gather. The doctor told us that his concussion is pretty bad. He won't be doing much for a while. While the young men talked, Yaoyorozu walked up to Tokoyami's bedside. Her classmate may have been asleep, but she could tell it wasn't restful. She tried to comfort Tokoyami by holding his hand, but the unconscious student flinched away from the touch. It must have been a nightmare for him. Bakugo, too. I can't even imagine what the League put him through. They're not out of the woods yet. Their mental healing will take longer than their physical healing. You sound like you're speaking from experience. Todoroki didn't respond to that comment. The heart monitor's tempo increased as Tokoyami began to shift in his sleep. His voice, although hoarse, produced fearful sounds. Shoji was by Tokoyami's side in an instant. Tokoyami, wake up! It's just a nightmare! You're safe! The UA students became worried when the thrashing became violent. Yaoyorozu and Shoji grabbed Tokoyami's arms to prevent him from hurting himself. But that action had the side effect of making the raven-haired teen panic even further. It's your friends! Shoji, Todoroki, and Yaoyorozu! We're right here! You don't have to be afraid! Tokoyami would have kicked Yaoyorozu in the head if Todoroki hadn't grabbed the raven teen by the ankles. This stopped Tokoyami from flailing about, but he began to shake violently. We saved you, remember? Shoji got you away from the League. Stop fighting us and wake up! Dark shadow emerged from Tokoyami's chest. The UA students were not expecting the shade to show up and feared the worst possible outcome as they let go of Tokoyami. No one moved and, aside from the machinery's beeping, it was chillingly quiet. Dark Shadow looked around the room, as though making sure it was actually safe. The Shadow's attention then turned to his wielder as the heart monitor's beeps slowed their pace. Without a word from the shade, Tokoyami began to awaken. The UA students calmed down and were elated when they saw their classmates' red eyes open. Tokoyami tried to sit up and look around while Shoji supported him. The Raven teen looked at each of his classmates.
Shoji, Yaoyorozu, and Todoroki. How long was I out?
Only a couple of hours. You're going to be staying at the hospital for a while, though, due to your injuries.
I see.
Tokoyami coughed a few times. Do you need some water? Tokoyami nodded. Yaoyorozu made a small cup. Todoroki filled it with ice before melting it with a small flame. Tokoyami took the glass and drank his fill. Tokoyami wants to thank you guys for saving him and Bakugo. He also wants to apologize. You don't need to apologize. It makes sense that you'd lose control of your quirk given the situation.
No, that's not why I'm apologizing.
Then why are you? Tokoyami was silent, so his shadow spoke for him. The villains wanted him or Bakugo to join the League. When their words didn't work, they started to torture Bakugo. The heroes jumped in just as Tokoyami was going to switch sides in exchange for Bakugo's life. Everyone could see that the Raven teen was ashamed of what he almost became. No one was quite sure what to say. But did you actually join them?
Of course not. I never wanted to betray any of you. But there wasn't anything else I could do.
There's no need for an apology. You didn't betray anybody. You made the best call you could, given the circumstances. He's right. I imagine that even a pro hero would have been forced to make the same sacrifice. A soft smile found its way onto Tokoyami's beak.
For the first time in many hours, he felt calm and at peace, despite the echoes of pain his mind and body felt. Tokoyami is happy to have you guys as his friends. That's enough out of you, Dark Shadow. Before the conversation could go on, the door opened up to a couple of officers. Pardon us, we need to ask Tokoyami a few questions. You three will need to leave. Yaoyorozu and Todoroki were willing to cooperate fully, but Shoji was more hesitant to leave his friend's side. I'll be fine, Shoji. I have Dark Shadow to keep me company. Okay, but I'll be back to see you later. Tokoyami and Dark Shadow nodded. Feeling confident in his friend's answer, Shoji followed his classmates out of the room. One of the officers closed the door as the students left. Relief washed over every single one of the UA students. The nightmare that had begun during their summer training camp was finally over.
Thank you all for indulging yourselves in the story thus far. Hope you enjoyed it. Now there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes deep into the facts and lore of a wide variety of anime. It's sure to expand your weeb knowledge for all kinds of series, guaranteed. On top of that, we have a third channel called We the Celestials Naruto What Ifs. It's what we do on this channel already, but in the vast world and lore of Naruto. Go check it out if you're in the mood for some jutsu action. I'd like to let you all know, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved for the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be provided in the description below. If you're perhaps interested in what we do here at WTC, then I would like to extend out an invitation to join the team, only caveat being that we only accept members 16 and older to join our crew. You can find us on our Discord, which you can locate in the description below. Our Discord is an all-around fantastic place to be. Whether you're a fan or looking to join our band of misfits, all you gotta do is hit up the recruitment server and sign up for whichever category of work that fulfills your interests. We're always looking for new members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video, so thank you all for watching and have a great day.